I think that oftentimes you get written out of history when you're not the one doing the writing.
World War II happened in many other places, and my grandma was one of those people who experienced that, and why have I never heard anything about the Philippines during the war?
No one talks about the Filipinos who were there, much less the fact that we took away their service afterwards. It's sort of a second-class kind of narrative about World War II.
All of the promises that they were made to fight were taken away from them, right? U.S. citizenship, benefits conferred on both themselves, on their spouses. I mean, you can't help but feel like a part of you has been taken away.
If they rob you of your honor and betray you on a promise that was made to you, they don't pay you and then they discount you. That's hard. You know, it's tantamount to being non-existent.
December 7th, 1941.
December 8, 1941.
A date which will live in infamy.
The war broke out in the Philippines.
Pearl Harbor is not just an attack on one base in Hawaii, it's also an attack on the Philippines.
The president, realized that, hey, we're not going to win the Pacific if we don't enlist the help of the Filipinos that are there.
And he says, basically, you are all now in the service of the United States. Filipinos and Americans marching together in the same forces, under the same flag. When the Japanese invade and conquer the Philippines, those forces disintegrate. But that doesn't mean that they stop fighting. That many of them recruit new soldiers into guerrilla armies.
Most people don't know that the Philippines is, outside of Poland, the most devastated Allied country. It is destroyed by World War II.
Roosevelt promised that if you fight under the U.S. flag, they were promised that they would be treated just like any American veteran. Well, that didn't happen.
The Rescission Act is at heart a broken promise. The Rescission Act is really one of the worst things Americans have ever done to the people who have served them.
I thought it will be easy to get their benefit, but I found out as a USAPI veteran, you are a second-rate citizen.
Why were Filipinos singled out? Among the 66 nations that were part of the Allied forces, Filipinos were singled out to be deprived of their rightful benefits. Why?
After the Rescission Act was passed in 1946, there were critics who tried to get it repealed. President Harry Truman said, "This does not relieve us of our moral obligation to Philippine veterans."
There was a couple Supreme Court cases. They were trying to get some benefits and the court ruled against them. I had suggested to the senator that maybe we try and do some kind of legislation.
When I came to Washington, I discovered that there were living veterans, and I was really moved by the fact that these are veterans in their 60s, 70s, marching the halls of Congress.
Many of them went on symbolic hunger strikes, and many of them chained themselves to the White House. These are the tactics of political action, of civil disobedience that they are learning from the civil rights movement.
Could you imagine that, being like, 70, 80 years old, and you believe so much in what you're fighting for, that you're willing to handcuff yourself to the gates of the White House knowing that you will be arrested?
What they really wanted was an official recognition by the United States government that they served under the U.S. flag, that they exist, that they mattered, that they fought side by side with American soldiers, and yet after the war was over, they were forgotten, like as if they never existed.
This is a Congressional Gold Medal awarded to Filipino World War II veterans.
The Congressional Gold Medal is one of our oldest traditions here in the Capitol.
The 260,000 Filipino men and women who fought under the American flag were vital to the Allied victory. Today, we commemorate their service and remember their sacrifice.
Congress responds when the people tells them what to do. Sometimes they don't, but in this case, it took more than 40 years. And I think it's a lesson. Anytime there is a cause that is worth fighting for, if you don't speak up, if you don't organize, and you don't let Congress know loud and clear that what they're doing is wrong, then nothing is ever going to happen.
There were over 260,000 Filipino troops that fought, and by the time we get to 2016, 17, there's like 18,000 left and dying daily.
I think most people, by and large, assume that we live in a country where a government does right by our people. Yet, when we uncover the story, it's a story that we need to remember so that we can remain vigilant.
That story is not going to be told unless we do this education project. And we committed ourselves to making sure that that story also becomes enshrined in American history, much like the Navajo Code Talkers, much like the Japanese American Nisei soldiers, much like the African Americans who fought during the Civil War, because this story is part of American history.